I wanted to be at Texas State. I chose to be at Texas State. I'm from Texas. That was important to me. I always knew if the right guy got this job, you better watch out.
You better watch out. This is Win Now or Get Bent, episode 171. If you don't already know, I'm Kep Chardello, coming to you on Thursday, September 26th. And we've got the Bearkats on Saturday. Bearkats versus Bobcats, rivalry renewed. There's bad blood pumping through these veins. Oh man, a heated rivalry is back. NRG Stadium in Houston this Saturday at 2 p.m. Texas State versus the Sam Houston State Bearcats. It's a rivalry that goes back all the way to 1915, over 100 games. It's back. It's been dormant since 2011 when the Bobcats win FBS, but no more. It's exciting. Can't wait for that one. Of course, we've got some more realignment talk, another realignment update. I'm sure plenty of you are tired of hearing about this time of the season when we got football games to worry about, but we got more to talk about with that. But we've got plenty to preview. Plus, Sam Houston State Bearcats reporter Josh Criswell joined me. Great preview there. It was great to talk with Josh. Hope you'll stick around for that one, but we'll do a little preview before that. Before we get to any of that, though, this episode is brought to you by First Lockhart National Bank. As the largest financial institution headquartered in Caldwell County, First Lockhart National Bank expanded to San Marcos in 2018 and opened a state-of-the-art branch on Hunter Road in 2020. For the past 6 years, FLNB has provided a wide range of financial services that have significantly improved the quality of life for the San Marcos community and beyond. Whether you need personal or business checking accounts, business loans, or home mortgages, they've got you covered. Plus, they offer innovative services like video banking, business banking, and a top-of-the-line mobile banking app. FLNB is also a huge supporter of Texas State football, standing out as one of the largest initial investors in NIL deals for Bobcats players. Be sure to follow them on Twitter, X, at First Lockhart, and on Instagram, at First Lockhart. Shout out to my guy, Gil Hodges, Senior Vice President at FLNB in MLS number 2475765. He's a proud Tech State grad and a diehard fan. We are thrilled to be partnering with Gil and FLNB all season long. You can find them at 2507 Hunter Road. That's 2507 Hunter Road, or give them a call at 512-504-7422. Again, that's 512-504-7422. First Lockhart National Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions may vary. Hey, Bobcat Nation. Looking for your next real estate move? McNabb & Company Real Estate Services has been proudly Bobcat owned and operated for over 15 years. They're your go-to team for buying, selling, investing, and managing properties and everything in between. Whether you're a fan or an alum, they've got the local expertise and full service support you need. Call them today at 512-667-9129. That's 512-667-9129. Or visit them at mcnabbandco.com. That's MCNABB, mcnabbandco.com. McNabb & Company, where Bobcats find their home. Give them a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and X at McNabb & Co. Shout out to Monica over at McNabb & Co. She's a day one Texas State supporter. Now she's supporting us through this season. Can't thank her and McNabb enough. Check them out again at mcnabbandco.com. MCNABB, mcnabbandco.com. All right, just two at the top. So let's get to these Bobcats. Before we get to the preview, we're going to do a little bit of realignment talk real fast. Real quick realignment talk. So Mike Craven of Dave Campbell's Texas Football, he put out a report saying that that Texas State is having active discussions with the Pac-12, the AAC, the Sun Belt, and also talking to the Mountain West as well, which is interesting. Even getting a little bit of renegotiation going with the Sun Belt. It's a great article by Mike Craven. I retweeted it. So go check that out. I won't read the whole thing, but I'm gonna read just a little bit of it. It's definitely worth your time. Go check this one out. Great reporting by Mike. This is from that article. Two schools that would explore moves from their current conferences are UTEP and Texas State. The television contracts in the Mountain West, Pac-12, and the American Athletic Conference would create massive windfalls for both institutions. Conference USA pays each team a reported $750K annually with the TV contract. The Sun Belt's total payout is roughly $2 million. The Mountain West Conference is closer to $4 million, while the AAC is $7 million. The Pac-12 could fetch $8 to $15 million depending on a future television deal. Yeah, it's a wide number between 8 and 15. Is it 8 or is it 15? That's been the crazy thing about the Pac-12 and that whole move to that conference, is that it's really a lot of unknowns going into that. A little more in this article. Again, I won't read the whole thing, so go check it out. But geography also, this is in the article, geography also plays a large factor in interest. Both UTEP and Texas State are on Western Islands by themselves. UTEP now has New Mexico State and Conference USA. A move to the Mountain West Conference or Pac-12 would save the program's money on travel, time for student athletes, and generate new income streams as athletes transition into potential employee status. Interesting stuff. Yeah, this is the part where he talks about Texas State. Dave Campbell's Texas football can report that Texas State has had active discussions with the Mountain West Conference, Pac-12, and the American Athletic Conference, as well as with the Sun Belt about remaining. Bobcats hope to capitalize on the momentum of the last 2 seasons alongside a robust alumni network in proximity to Austin and San Antonio. A source confirms that the Texas State brass is working the phones daily to build a case for the Bobcats as an attractive option. So, if you've listened to this is the 3rd episode now, we're talking about realignment, but the last 2, we talked about this. The first one, it was just like, oh, there's a little bit here. And the last episode we updated, there's a little bit more here. Now there's quite a bit there. I remember one of the questions in the mailbag was, is this just clickbait, or is this like a real situation? And it's the wheels are in motion, especially with, an update from the Tuesday episode when we talked about realignment. When I did the update, a little time travel, jumped in there, and I said that people keep talking about a reverse merger where the Pac-12 and the Mountain West are just going to combine forces with each of them having 7 teams. But that's no more because there's bad blood. I mean, the Pac-12 is suing the Mountain West Conference, trying to get out of their exuberant exit fees or poaching fees that they've occurred from taking all those Mountain West teams, up to 5 now that they've taken, with Utah State getting into the mix as well. So they're not, a merger doesn't seem likely, at least not at this moment. Things happen, and who knows, they'll get in mediation and figure it out, and they could possibly still come together. But as of right now, they don't like each other. And UNLV just said that they're committed to the Mountain West. They're staying in the Mountain West. So the Pac-12 needs a team. The Mountain West needs a team because they need to get to that 8-team minimum. They need to have 8 teams in order to be an FBS conference. So they're searching to add a team, and this puts the Bobcats at an advantage, a financial advantage, with 2 desperate conferences in the Pac-12 and the Mountain West, both needing a team, both interested in Texas State. I think most of us agree that the Pac-12 would be a better option there. Although I've heard cases for the Mountain West as well. It's not as much money. Let's look at this money again from Dave Campbell's. Mountain West is $4 million a year. The AAC is $7 million. The Pac-12 could be estimated $8 to $15 million, but that's unknown. The Pac-12 is unknown. The AAC money is $7 million, but we've seen new members go into that conference and get half that, and their TV deal is also coming up. So who knows if that $7 million is even going to stay put. So that might create some issues. I know I was leaning more towards AAC, but the more I think about it, especially how they held their current teams hostage from even leaving to the Pac-12 with these exuberant exit fees that they had, north of 25 million potentially, was what was threatened. So would you really want Texas State to get trapped into that situation with the American Athletic Conference? And who knows? It seems like there's a lot more smoke surrounding Mountain West and Pac-12, especially with their desperation needing another team, than there is the AAC right now. As much as I love the in-state rivalry and the easy travel for the team, it just seems like these other options are popping up more. The Mountain West and the Pac-12. I will say it's good that they're doing something. They're in there. They're working the phones. They're doing stuff in the background. One was assuming when all this stuff was popping out that Texas State was a potential target, that there were some things going on, but it's nice to get some confirmation on that. But let's not spend too much time on realignment. We have a game on Saturday. Right now it's Thursday, so it's coming up in a couple days. But Sam Houston State, as I was saying, it's renewing that rivalry. 50, 37, and 5, the Bobcats own in the all-time series. I said over 100 games, but doing my math now, that's not 100. I thought it was over 100 since it was 1915, but there's been a pretty long hiatus. So 50, 37, and 5, the Bobcats are up, although Sam Houston State did win the last one. So there is that. There is that for the Bearcats. They like to hang their hat on that. I can remember when the Bobcats jumped to FBS, there was no more saltier fan base about it than the ones in Huntsville. They thought they should have gotten the jump before the Bobcats. But this is some great stuff from Colton McWilliams at the San Marcos Daily Record. He did a great write-up on the rivalry between Texas State and Sam Houston State. And again, I won't read all of it, but just some stuff that's pertinent for this episode. This is from the San Marcos Daily Record. From jumping to FCS in 1984 through their meeting in 2011, 20 of the previous 27 games played between the Bobcats and the Bearcats were all one-possession games. So it's been a real close rivalry. I can remember one of those close games, which I'll talk about here in just a little bit. My own experience with the Sam Houston State rivalry. It's a little more from that article. The rivalry between the Bobcats and Bearcats has existed for over 100 years, spanning across 4 different conferences. In fact, it is one of the most played series in the state of Texas, with 91 total meetings. More than SMU Rice, 91, Baylor Texas Tech, 82, Texas Tech, 70, Texas A&M Texas Tech, 70, and TCU Texas Tech, 66. The series went on hiatus after the 2011 season, but will make its grand return this Saturday as the Bobcats battle the Bearcats at NRG Stadium in Houston. So there's a lot of history here, and there's a lot of you that probably don't remember that history. You're not old like me, where you weren't around for the Southland days, in beyond, or even before that. It was even they've been in 4 different conferences with this team over a long period of time. So this rivalry, it was a big one for a while, and it's been dormant and hadn't really been talked about a lot. And you see it pop up every now and then on Twitter. It's obviously not as visceral as the UTSA one, but there is a lot more history that goes into it. My personal Sam Houston State rivalry story. I in 2008, I was working for the University Star. The Bobcats was a really good team. Brad George at quarterback, Cam Luke at receiver, Carrington Bush at running back. That was a fun team. That was a good team. And they were rolling that year, and it came down to the last game of the regular season, who was going to take home the Southland title. And as was per usual those days, the last game of that season was Texas State versus Sam Houston State. It was a big rivalry. That year it was in Huntsville. I decided I was going to make the trip. I can remember at the time my grandmother was still alive and she was sick at the time. So it was like, okay, I could double duty. I could go see my grandma and then go cover this game. It was my first road game as a reporter as well. So that was pretty cool and memorable for me. Got to that game, was in the press box. It was an amazing game. What was that score? 48-45. I should have looked up that score before I did this. Ended in overtime with the Bobcats winning. When you're in the press box, they'll bring you down to the field about 5 minutes left in regulation, so you can be there ready for interviews and everything. And they did that with 5 minutes left in regulation, and a lot of craziness ensued, and the game ended up in overtime. So I was on the sideline for a long time, and I was right on the goal line when Carrington Bush crossed it, and the Bobcats won that game. They ended up being crowned the Southland champions. That was really cool. Rhett Bomar was the quarterback of San Houston State. Anybody remember him? He went to Oklahoma. He's on the cover of Sports Illustrated when I was like a senior in high school. And he went to Oklahoma, got in some trouble. I think it was a fake job at a car wash or something like that. Ended up at Sam Houston State. But he was a really good quarterback. I think he may have had a cup of coffee in the NFL or something. So that was a good game between Bradley George and Rhett Bomar. So I definitely remember this rivalry. I remember that one. That was my first taste of it. I didn't get many more after that before the Bobcats went FBS and it went dormant, but it's nice to have it back. Little bit of nostalgia, going into this one. But let's talk about the game itself, though. Sam Houston State, they're 3-1, 1-0 in conference. Some of you may remember they started last year was their first FBS season, transitioning from the FCS, and they went 0-8 to start the year. Since then, they're 6-2. They ended the year 3-1 last year, 3-1 this year. Right now, they have the second best scoring defense in Conference USA with 20.8 points allowed per game. 21, I guess, if you round up there. Third best total defense, allowing 322 yards. Fourth best scoring offense in Conference USA at 27.8 points scoring per game. Third in total yards with 374. 195 of those are passing, which is second in the conference. I'm sorry, rushing. 195 of that is rushing, which is second in the conference, and 179 yards per game passing, which is eighth. Definitely a running team. That starts with their quarterback, Hunter Watson. He's an Iowa Western transfer, JUCO transfer. Came in. It was a bit of a quarterback battle in fall camp, and he emerged, and he's done pretty terrific so far. I mean, passing the ball, turns it over a little bit, but running that ball 4 games, 43 rushes, 233 yards, and 2 scores. He's passed for 540 yards, 5 touchdowns to 5 picks. So he has been a little turnover friendly, but he's done some great things with his legs. Big guy too, bigger guy, despite being the dual threat moniker. Usually you see those from shorter, faster guys. He's kind of a unit. He's a bit of a load to run into. But Casey Keeler, Sam Houston State turned him around after that tough FBS start. Now they're looking like a Casey Keeler team. I mean, this is a team that won the national championship in 2020. So this is a team that they even have players on the team. And we talked to Josh Criswell here in a little bit. You'll hear from him. There's players on this team that were on that team. They're still around, so they have some championship pedigree, if you will, on the roster, some championship experience. So it's a good team. This is a good team. But the Bobcats, they're favored by 8.5, and they're favored by 8.5 for a reason. Going into this one, even though Sam Houston State, they do have some good wins. Texas State, they're 2-1, 1 loss to Arizona State. We all know about that. First 2 wins over Lamar and UTSA. Some Texas State stats, they are third best in Sun Belt scoring offense with 37 points per game, second best in total yards at 463 total yards, fourth in rushing yards with 180, second in passing with 283, third best scoring defense at 23 points per game, 22.7 to be exact, second best total yards with 323. So they're humming. They're humming along. They're doing really well, the Bobcats. Both teams are doing well in their respective conferences. Just reading off the stats, though, Texas State has had some pretty tough opponents themselves, and they've put up some good stats. The one thing I didn't realize this till I was looking at stats prepping for this episode, the Bobcats are leading the Sun Belt in sacks with 12 sacks. They've really gotten after it. We've seen them get after it, and you're seeing the stats really come together. Now that we're 3 games into the season, you can kind of start looking at these conference stats, and they carry a little more weight. They're obviously not everything. It's going to change so much through the rest of the season, but right now that's pretty great to see for the Bobcats. Only 4 sacks allowed too from the offensive line. Put a lot of that on Jordan McLeod, real shifty guy, moving around. We mentioned Hunter Watson's stats. There was we mentioned also earlier Dave Campbell's. There was an article in Dave Campbell's that had the 5 best transfer players in Texas, and Hunter Watson was number 3, Sam Houston State's quarterback coming in from Iowa Western, but no Jordan McLeod. And I read those Hunter Watson stats: 223 yards rushing, 540 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Here's Jordan McLeod's stats through 3 games: 17 rushes for 84 yards and 2 scores, 815 passing yards, 9 touchdowns, 3 picks. Jordan McLeod, it's doing awesome. It's doing great. Should be on that list. Dave Campbell's, y'all do great work, but that one was missed a little bit. I only put Jordan McLeod's stats right here, but I'm going to pull up. Let's go through some other individual stats for the Bobcats. Let's look at it. On rushing, we've got Motti leading the way with 250 yards. Lincoln Perry at 155 right there. Jordan McLeod, 84, third in rushing. Let's look at receivers real quick. Joey Hobart leading the way for receivers, 18 catches for 190 yards, 2 scores. Chris Don, 10 catches, 184 yards, 3 scores. Jaden Williams, 12 catches, 159 yards, 3 scores. Spread out real nicely, even with Cole Wilson here. 12 catches, 120 yards. No scores yet for Cole Wilson. You'll find that end zone. We all know it. But those were the 4 starting receivers that I just listed right there. And we've talked about it. They've been real starter heavy when it comes to this unit. You have Bo Sparks coming off the bench. He's the next one on the list. 7 catches, 74 yards. That score in the last time out. 19-yard score against Arizona State. You can see a great angle of it on our cinematic recap, Win Now or Get Bent, on YouTube. Go check it out. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Connor Fox, 4 catches, 26 yards. Let's get that up. Let's get that one up. So there you go. There's some Bobcat stats for you. This one, the Bobcats are favored by 8.5, and I feel like there's a reason for that. This is a really good opponent for they're doing some real work in the G5, especially turning it around after that bad FBS start that they had. They've looked really strong the last few games, but I just feel like the Bobcats are going to look stronger. They've had a lot of time off, a lot of time to rest. I think they're going to have more rest than rust in this game. I think this is a team that is deep and it's talented, and I don't think having time off is going to give them any rust. They're pretty experienced, starting with the quarterback, Jordan McLeod, ton of experience. We saw it, Arizona State game, prime time, bright lights are on, and he showed up. Wasn't a moment that was too big for him. Doesn't feel like there's many of those that he will face, Jordan McLeod at Texas State. There was that one interception, but I mean, there's a little bit of desperate times in that one. And seems like there's going to be a pick a game with McLeod. He does get a little risky, but if he can turn in a 4-touchdown performance, it's hard to get too mad at an interception. But for me, I have the Bobcats winning this one. I've had them winning it for a while, even though Sam Houston State's coming out a little stronger than a lot of us anticipated. I think the Bobcats are going to handle this one. NRG Stadium. I'm excited for that one. That's going to be fun to go check out a nice pro stadium. It'll be the first time I'm covering a game there. I've been to a game. This will be the first time I'm covering a game there. So I'm excited. See what their nice press box is like. I'll get there nice and early. Gonna try to day trip it, Got kids now, so I don't wanna leave my wife hanging too much. So I'm gonna wake up early, get there, and then I'm going to come back all in one day. We'll see how that goes. No overnight in old Houston for me. But let's get to Josh Criswell. Josh Criswell, great stuff coming up with that Sam Houston State game. It's great to talk with Josh. I think you're really going to enjoy his perspective on the game. So here he comes, Josh Criswell. We have a very special guest with us with Sam Houston State coming up. We went and got our best Bearcat reporter we could find. It's Josh Criswell. I almost called you Chris Criswell. That would be insane if your parents had given you that name. But Josh Criswell is here. Josh, how's it going, man?
It's going well. I'm excited for the game this weekend. For me, I joined the Bearcat beat probably around 2018, the first time around, and never really got to experience the Sam Houston Texas State rivalry. I was about 7 years removed from the last time they played, so it's been exciting. It's definitely one of those that it feels like the older fans are really excited about, and I think there's a lot of potential for the younger fans to really get into it.
Yeah, it's such a crazy rivalry to go on hiatus, especially considering that even on hiatus, they've played over 100 games, even though they hadn't played since 2011. But you talk about the older fans pretty excited about the rivalry being renewed, and I'm one of them, definitely. I remember the Southland days. I'm an old man, so I remember it fondly. It'll be nice to see the Bobcats and Bearcats square off again.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say too, it's kind of funny you mentioned, playing like 100 times, about throughout their history. With Sam Houston, this is huge, right? Because they kind of lost that SFA rivalry with the move to the FBS, and so I think this is kind of a natural fit. Texas State was a bit of kind of seemed almost like a bit of a model for them, right? And kind of following their footsteps to the FBS. So I think it's about as perfect as you can get for a non-conference rivalry in Texas.
Yeah, because even here, of course, Texas State, UTSA, that's the big one that's talked about, but it's not a conference rivalry. It's never really been one. There isn't that that history. I mean, Texas, Southwest Texas State, I guess, and Sam Houston State, they've been in 4 different conferences against each other over the years. So it's been a long, long rivalry. So the fact that Sam Houston State is FBS now, I feel like it's going to renew a little something there. And who knows, maybe it shakes out. They end up in the same conference again at some point. But it is exciting. I can remember back when the Bobcats went FBS, and there was a lot of people in Huntsville that were upset. They're like, "We just beat them not too long ago. How can we not move up yet?" But the Bearcats eventually got there. You know, that natty in 2020, that sure helped. And you were there for that national title in 2020. That had to have been a blast to cover, be around that team when all that excitement's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that was so cool about it was, Sam Houston the previous 2 years won 7 games each season, which is an above average year for most teams. But the way they were playing at the FCS, that was considered a bit of a disappointment. So coming off of that, really slept on. And then for them, they had to go through all their former tormentors in the playoffs, right? So you take down North Dakota State, James Madison, these teams that kind of sent you home and ruined some of those special seasons of years past. And also just doing it, during COVID in the championship game, couldn't ask for a better ending. Eric Schmid throwing a touchdown pass to Ife Adeyi, who is still on the team, by the way, at receiver, to win the game in the final seconds. So one of the coolest seasons and teams I've ever had the chance to cover. But this year's team definitely seems like it has some potential as well.
Yeah, Ife, you mentioned him. It's funny when you said he's still on the team. I was looking at the box score yesterday of the last game, and I was like, oh, he's still there. Oh, that's wild. He's been there a long time. I can remember the Bobcats were trying to recruit him at some point. You mentioned the team this year. Obviously, they moved to FBS. The Bearcats moved to FBS last season. It was an 0-8 start, but then I believe they won 3 of their last 4, if I have that right. It was something. I remember the last 4 games went really well. And then they have 3-1 this year so far. Oh, from your take, what has been the change from that 0-8 start, where it's a pretty shaky FBS start, to now they've rattled off some terrific wins, 6-2, in fact, in their last 8 games.
Yeah, I think a big part of it, there's a good bit of, continuity, it seemed like, from, that last year, having that strong finish and really carrying that over into this year. But really, I think kind of depth across the board is one of the biggest things. That's always one of your big challenges when you're transitioning to being an FBS team. You haven't had years of additional scholarships to build up that depth yet. So I think you're really seeing a lot of that, especially on the defensive side of the ball, as well as at spots like running back. But on defense, especially, you see a team that's just big, physical, fast. They're running the ball. They're able to rotate guys. So that's really been one of the things that's most impressed me. I look back to last week against New Mexico State, and the offense, they had some explosive plays, but it wasn't their best day by any stretch of the imagination. And it still feels like they were blowing out New Mexico State by the second quarter just because they couldn't, get a first down on offense. So I think that defense has been really impressive. And then Hunter Watson at quarterback has been a really fun one to watch. Very different quarterbacks, but I made them kind of a rough comparison on my show this week. But he kind of reminds me of some of the characteristics of Eric Schmid, the quarterback they had when they went and won the championship a few years ago. Just a lot of those intangibles, a guy who's, probably going to do his most damage, kind of outside the structure of the offense, kind of whenever he gets loose and kind of starts freestyling a little bit. That's where things really get interesting. So I think it's going to be a really exciting one to watch. A ton of good receivers. Quavez Humphrey, just a massive big body down the field. You know, Simeon Evans, another big one that's come up with a few touchdowns. And then obviously guys like Noah Smith and Ife Adeyi, who are still around from that championship team, and really versatile guys, right? Ife's a receiver. They like to use him a lot. obviously in the short passing game, some deep threats, but also like to use him a lot kind of on those handoffs and motions across the field. And Noah's a really interesting one because he's one that they've played at quarterback, running back, can kind of do a little bit of everything, but he's also a former high school quarterback from the Houston area. And so they had a little running back receiver touchdown pass a few weeks ago. So a lot of tools for them to use. But really, if I had to pick one thing that's been the difference in their season, it's got to be that depth across the board.
Yeah, getting that depth at the FBS level, that's the biggest thing. I remember that being Texas State's biggest battle when they went FBS was getting that depth, getting up to those 85 scholarship players. Because that is a lot. It's a lot more money. It's a lot more recruiting and everything you got to do. You know, you bring up Hunter Watson and how well he can improv and move around and do all these things. If that's one thing I've noticed with Texas State is they definitely like to rush the passer. They send a lot of blitzes and their D line likes to get after it. But when they went up against a quarterback like Sam Levet at Arizona State, who could move around a little bit, it gave them trouble. Once someone who can kind of get out of the pocket and improv a little more, it seemed to be an issue for this defense. Do you think that's a lot of what Watson does? It seems like early on he is almost kind of that dual threat that makes something happen if it's not there.
Yeah, no, and I think one of the big things that helps him, especially against teams that like to get after the quarterback, is he's a big guy. It almost reminds me in terms of, teams trying to take him down, almost a little bit like Ben Roethlisberger, where it's just kind of easy to shake a guy off. There are some instances I think with that pressure where it could cause some problems. I think there's still some moments with taking shots and kind of those risky plays where you kind of have to weigh, is this worth trying it? I think he's slowly kind of, making that transition from high level JUCO to being in the FBS, just sort of learning, what throws you can and can get away with. So I think that's going to be really, I think that pressure on defense could be the determining factor, both, in terms of are they able to cut down on some of those interceptions while also using his legs to really break some of those open. Because I mean, last week that was kind of an example of how it all happened, right? The offense wasn't really going that great, and then all of a sudden he breaks like a 45-yard touchdown run, and the Bearcats are just kind of rolling from that point. So I think that's going to be really one of the key matchups to watch, and also kind of on the flip side for Sam Houston, I think trying to find a way to stop that really dangerous quarterback running back duo for Texas State. That's going to be a challenge for them as well. So I think we need to look at the quarterbacks a lot whenever we're looking at how this game's going to turn out.
Yeah, it's going to be a terrific quarterback battle. And, obviously people were talking about Jordan McLeod when he came to Texas State, reigning Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year at JMU last season. But Hunter Watson kind of flew under the radar coming in from Iowa Western. I know I definitely didn't see it coming until the Bearcats started out this season. It's like, oh man, they have a guy who's really running around. You mentioned the interceptions. He does seem to turn it over sometimes, but his dynamic play seems to outweigh any of the turnovers. So will be an interesting quarterback battle for sure. Two really good transfer quarterbacks in the state of Texas squaring off on Saturday.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm excited to see Jordan McLeod out there. He was one of those transfers that I've been, most excited to watch. And, I think him and Hunter Watson, two different levels of, maybe fanfare surrounding their arrivals at their new homes. But I think with Hunter Watson, it's been a great situation. It's also been interesting because we didn't know who the quarterback was going to be until he took the first snap in week 1. So I think it's been good. They've been able to stick with one guy. I think, especially as a team coming off an up and down season, the last thing you can have is going into the year not knowing who your quarterback is. So that's been a huge factor in their success as well, is just having an answer at that position.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting atmosphere at NRG Stadium as well, instead of one of the team's home fields. NRG, I'm sure you're in that area. Have you ever covered a game there? This will be my first one covering a game at NRG, but excited to see it.
Yeah, no, and it's always a fun environment. So I used to cover the Texans, and so I would, I was there a good bit for that. But I also would cover the Bearcats against Stephen F. Austin in the Battle of the Piney Woods, and that was always the coolest game of the year. A good 25,000 or so fans. which for both of these teams is a big number, obviously. And so it's fun. I think with Sam Houston, especially, like their largest alumni base is in the Houston area. So they always turn out really well, whether it's there, showing up at the Rice game on the road earlier this season, going to baseball games whenever they play University of Houston. So it really fits in well for them. I'm very interested kind of on the flip side with Texas State, 'cause it's not really as easy of just kind of a drive around the corner as it is with all those Sam Houston fans in Houston just rolling out of bed and driving 15 minutes to the stadium. So I'll be interested to kind of see, because Sam Houston really has that tradition of NRG Stadium's always been their big game of the year. So I'm interested to see, how the Texas State fans respond to that.
Yeah, if they're gonna travel, I know there's a decent sized alumni base in Houston, but their biggest ones are Austin and San Antonio. So it'll be a bit of a drive. We'll see if they show up and show out. They showed up to the UTSA game in San Antonio. That's a
Yeah.
closer drive, but I feel like this is a hated rival. This a heated rivalry. You gotta make that trek out there. But it'll be interesting to see if Maroon and Gold make it out to that one.
Yeah.
We'll go
And
ahead.
one thing I was going to add too is, obviously, at the FBS, you get to play in front of bigger crowds more frequently than FCS. But, if this is a game that they could make a bit of an annual fixture, I know for Sam Houston, it was a huge recruiting tool, because this would kind of be the thing you sell to recruits of, hey, like no matter how the season goes, you're guaranteed to play in a big time game in an NFL stadium. So that's something, if they want to keep this game going, that's one of the positives to go along with it.
Hey, an annual meetup. I'm sure they'd have to go back and forth a little bit, not all the way to
Yeah.
Houston every year, but it's probably a lot of fun for these Texas State players to get to play in NRG as well. So maybe
Yeah.
maybe an annual fixture, like you said. We brought up earlier that it'd be nice if they were back in the same conference. And there might be a world where this happens with all this conference realignment shakeup, the Pac-12 or the Pac-7, whatever you want to call it. They're battling with the Mountain West, and they're all trying to find teams. Everyone's scrambling to realign, it seems. What have you heard anything with Sam Houston? Are they trying to kick the tires, look around, or is it just it's so early days for them in FBS? They're probably not trying to rock the boat too much.
Yeah, I would imagine not so. I think one of the things that's really interesting about them with realignment, Conference USA might not, obviously isn't viewed as maybe the top group of five league out there, but one thing they've done really well kind of under the radar is just slowly adding teams, kind of give all their teams a little bit of a sense of security. Because I mean, adding Kennesaw, Delaware, you're already up to 11 teams for next year. So just on the realignment front, I think they're in a really good spot in terms of they don't have to worry about anything. But if an appealing offer that you can't turn down comes around, you obviously just got to listen to it. So I think for them, this whole kind of latest realignment whirlwind has kind of been, bit of confirmation of their move to the FBS being the right one. Just to like think back of where they were a few years ago, and then fast forward to this week, where as unlikely as it is, they're mentioned as a throw-in name in an article about Pac-12 realignment. So I think that kind of shows you a lot about, where they've been now from being in the Southland just about 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's a completely different world for Sam Houston, and I get why they're in some of these conversations. It has been interesting to watch Conference USA and how you just said they just slowly add teams instead of trying to poach from their peer conferences. They actually uplifted some teams from the FCS level, Sam Houston State being one. Kennesaw, like you just mentioned, in Delaware. It's interesting to see Conference USA and if they'll stand pat and try and keep that core and keep with the numbers. There is security in that. You at least have a schedule, because we're seeing it now with the Pac-12 being the Pac-7 and the Mountain West having 7 teams. They need 8 to be in a FBS conference. So there is a little bit of security in that. So I get
Yeah.
that 100%.
With Texas State, though, it kind of seems like y'all are in a very, very prime position where you're at, because especially with the latest news of UNLV sticking in the Mountain West, all of a sudden you have two conferences looking for one more team at the very least, probably more in terms of just having that security we talked about. So Mountain West or Pac-12, I think you could definitely see an offer come Texas State's way, which would further, add some dominoes, with Sam Houston and all of a sudden is the Sun Belt looking for a new team.
Hey.
So that's kind of the crazy thing about all of this is that it seems like each week there's a new piece that, kind of adds something. I was prepping for a realignment segment for my show on Tuesday, and I was writing everything out, early afternoon Monday, and basically just had to throw it all in the trash,
Yeah.
by the end of that afternoon. So I'm sure by the time this comes out, maybe something else is developed, but it's exciting. I think for both of these schools, a lot of times there's some anxiety with conference realignment, but I think with both of these teams, they're kind of in a spot where whatever unfolds in this situation that comes of what's recently happened, I think it's only going to be a positive for them. Either they're going to stay where they are, or they're going to get a better opportunity out of it.
Yeah, it seems like it's uncharted territory, all this realignment and everything. But I feel like when it's said and done, both programs could come out better than where they were right before it. That's funny you mentioned having to throw out your material. I recorded a pod Monday morning and I hadn't released it, and by noon all this news was coming out. And I was like, all right, I gotta hold off and update it. So I waited till later to update it. It's kind of interesting with how quickly it all moves and goes. Well, Josh, are you going to be at the game on Saturday?
So I won't be there, unfortunately. I've got a wedding commitment actually in
Oh
San
man,
Marcos that I've got to be at on Saturday. So I'll be tuned in heavily to ESPN Plus throughout that ceremony.
where'd you say the wedding was?
San Marcos.
You're gonna. That's. I thought you said that at first, and
Yeah.
so you're gonna be in San Marcos. That's pretty funny how that works
Yeah,
out.
so maybe I'll cruise around, see if I can find some Texas State fans who stayed in town watching the game.
There you go. There's a good spot called Zelix. Go hit them
Nice.
up. I know they'll be showing the game. They'll be showing
Awesome.
Sam Houston State, Texas State for sure. Man, but those fall weddings, they should be illegal.
Yeah,
Unbelievable. No,
yeah,
but
I've already mapped mine out for spring/summer to avoid any similar circumstances.
all right. Well, Josh, give some plugs. I know you're doing the radio show with Coach Keeler. To talk a little bit about what you're doing these days.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm doing so nowadays I'm out of somewhat 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the full-time journalism industry. But I'm the student advisor for the Houstonian Sam Houston State's award-winning student newspaper. I also teach mass communication, but then also this week, me and Jason Barfield, the director for athletics, video, and multimedia at Sam Houston, started the school's first live radio show. So every Tuesday, 4 p.m. It's called BSN Live, and you can find it all on gobearcats.com, as well as the BSN Plus app. So make sure to check that out. I'll send out links every week with the show. But yeah, it's something new. We're really excited to bring in. We're going to incorporate a lot of interviews and stuff like that, but also have something that's a bit of a, more of a traditional talk show. So last week we talked about the game, but we also talked about Colton Cowser and the Bearcats and the pros getting ready to go to the postseason in baseball, a little conference realignment. And then we close out every show with CUSA rapid fire pick'em. So something for a little bit of everybody in there.
Great stuff. I should have called you Professor Josh Criswell.
We'll save it for next time.
We'll save it for next time. I like to think I'd take your class if you're teaching a mass comm class. I bet that's a lot of fun. Well, Josh, I appreciate you jumping on. I'm excited for the game, and I'm excited for our paths to cross. Maybe I'll catch you on your way out of San Marcos.
There we go. Maybe a stop at Buc-ee's along I-10 on our way back to our respective homes.
There you go. I know. Whereas it's one in Luling, I think that'll be on your way back to Houston.
There we go.
That'll be great. Thanks again, Josh Criswell, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
This episode was brought to you by TGC LLC, the GalindoCollective.com. That's GALINDO, GalindoCollective.com. A team of professional consultants dedicated to helping others realize their business potential through people, planning, and practice. Their services cover a wide range of areas such as business strategy, marketing, human resources, and financial planning. If you own property or a business and want to maximize its profitability, contact TGC at thegalindocollective.com and follow their social media platforms on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at TGC_LLC, and on Instagram and Facebook at the Galindo Collective. Shout out to my guy, Rick Galindo, a true Tech State sicko, a Tech State grad. He's been with us since last season, all through this season, and he's even helping us get you to the games with our TGC ticket giveaway. Look out for those coming up for the next home games. Shout out again to my guy, Rick Galindo, and the Galindo Collective. That's GALINDO, the Galindo Collective.com. All right, one more for our guys at Chilzey, CHILLZEY.com. They got custom tumblers, custom koozies. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, Win Now or Get Bent on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. You can see me holding up this Win Now or Get Bent tumbler from Chilzey.com. You can get any custom logo you want to throw on there. You can get the Win Now or Get Bent logo. You can get a work logo, a family insignia for a reunion, whatever you got. You can throw it on there. When you order 6 or more of these and you punch in Bobcats at the checkout, they are $15 a piece. Not a bad deal for these nice tumblers. And on top of that, they've got koozies. A lot of you have seen these koozies before. Throwing the camo one in the mix. I busted that one out at the last episode. We'll be handing out koozies at home games. I might sneak a few to NRG. If you see me around and you shout out Win Now or Get Bent, I'll get you a koozie. They got white, black, camo. Look at, here we go. Let's throw another one. We've got an American one right there. Very patriotic. You can get any color, any logo you want to get on there. So go check them out, and we'll also be handing those out at the game. So look for that. Shout out to my guy, Dennis Redding at Chilzey, a true Tech State sicko, a Tech State grad. His son, Bryson, he's a Tech State sicko, and he's a future Tech State grad, right? That's what we're hoping for. Thanks so much for them, for they've been letting us pass out these koozies since last season. We'll be doing it again this year. Check them out, Chilzey.com, CHILLZEY.com. Check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/WinNowOrGetBent. Our great intern, Reese Largent's throwing stuff up on there. Check out our merch site, WNOGB.com. I've got the great black Win Now or Get Bent shirt right there. Go ahead and order you one of those. YouTube, check us out, like, subscribe. Hopefully you're watching on now. If not, shout out to our audio heads as well, always supporting us. I messed with the optimized ads. I brought that up in the last episode. Hopefully that's still staying true. You guys reach out if they try to slap too many of those optimized ads on there. Any ad that I'm not reading, they got to put some on there. Help us accrue the cost of hosting, being able to launch it out to Apple and Spotify, but we don't want to bombard it with all of those in the middle of the pod. But thank you to you audio listeners. Audio numbers are always strong. That's how we started, was audio. Well, until our 100th episode, we did video. So thank you to our audio listeners. Check us out on Twitter at Win Now or Get Bent, and on Instagram at WNOGB. I mentioned I need to uniform those, make them all WNOGB. Something I've learned from my ad reads, getting to know these companies, some of these businesses, they all have them the same, all their social media, and it's a smart move. It's pretty easy to just tell people, hey, go to this one. But like, subscribe, comment on all those platforms, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're at. Make sure you get active. It helps our numbers. Thank you so much to First Lockhart National Bank. Thanks so much to McNabb. Thank you so much to TGC LLC and to Chilzey, our great producer, the wizard, Zachary Webb, working extra hard. Check out that cinematic recap, that Arizona State one. Even though it's not the result you want, those highlights are still pretty sweet. You'll like those touchdowns. That Bo Sparks touchdown I talked about earlier. And you sickos, thanks for always tuning in. Thanks for always listening to us. I'd be shouting into the void without you. You guys have helped us grow, and we're doing awesome things. And we're going up and on no matter what conference the Bobcats are in. Exciting times, fun stuff. All right, everybody. Saturday, Sam Houston State, Texas State squaring off in Houston. Be there, or at least be watching somewhere, because we'll be talking about it afterwards. All right, everybody. I'll see you in Houston. Win now or get bent.